Let's be clear. If he was reluctant to play, guys, he wouldn't be here.
Someone's at the front doorbell.
That's right. Someone is at the front doorbell. And as a result, they're going...
It's Zach Wilson, run!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard here, Sports Talk Nation. Michael Cohen here with you. I can't imagine what we're going to talk about today. Oh, yeah, that's right, the New York Jets. I would love to talk about Juan Soto because we all know Dan's getting ready to not just hoist the Stanley Cup later this year with the Rangers, but the Yankees are going to win the World Series. So, you know, that's going to happen too.
I did not tell him to say that, first of all. I am not going there yet. I just want a good regular season first. But go ahead, Michael.
But you're going to get one. At least you won't be in last place like our baseball team, at least. Something like that. But the Jets, oh my God. I mean, you talk about a team that defines and redefines drama. I can't wrap my head around what has now transpired over the last 72 hours. We have gone from the story being that Zach Wilson was reluctant to play again because of risk of injury, and probably because he was angry at the Jets for benching him for Tim Boyle. And now at the end result, after all this coming apart and Robert Saleh stumbling through press conferences and interviews with Michael Kay show, and then Joe Beningo, and then with Aaron Rodgers with a profanity-laced tirade on the Pat McAfee show, the Jets decided to give the ball back to Zach Wilson. I just cannot wrap my head around any of this anymore. I just can't take it anymore. I really can't.
It's called the saving face moment. That's what it is, Michael. It's the saving face moment. Look, it's very disappointing and very disheartening how quickly this entire situation has snowballed in front of our eyes. Forget about Aaron Rodgers, losing him for the entire season after 4 plays in Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills in week 1 of the NFL season. Just the absurdity of how not only injuries have really destroyed this year with the offensive line and other moments, but the inept quarterback play that we have seen, not just from Zach Wilson, not just from Tim Boyle, also whatever shred of hope you had with Trevor Siemian being out there, it just wasn't enough. This entire situation from day one, after going 4-3, maybe even before they went 4-3, they refused, meaning Joe Douglas, he refused to bring in a better, more experienced quarterback to salvage the season, and instead put his ego on the line and kept Zach Wilson out there. And after a miraculous performance against the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they fell short on that one, and even though they beat the Eagles, they beat the Broncos, they beat the Giants, it still wasn't good enough. It didn't give you any confidence that Zach Wilson could maintain anything. And what happens? Unfortunately, Joe Douglas was too arrogant, too egotistical to say, I got to take Zach Wilson out now before it gets any worse. It got worse.
And not only has it gotten worse, look, I mean, understandably, yes. Does Zach Wilson give the Jets a better chance to win than Tim Boyle or Trevor Siemian? Yeah, I mean, he's more talented than they are, obviously. But just the way that this was all handled, everything was just self-inflicted wounds, Rick. I mean, everything they did was just self-inflicted wounds. As Dan pointed out, it could have all been avoided if they had just accepted just going after a veteran quarterback at the start of the season, in the offseason, to supplement this, the bringing in of Aaron Rodgers to be the backup to Aaron Rodgers. You made this commitment saying, hey, look, Zach Wilson, we don't want him to play at all this year. Instead, they obviously have the worst case scenario happen 4 plays in, and you have to throw Wilson in there, and it's been an absolute train wreck since. And they have done everything they can to make it worse for themselves. It's just incredible. Go ahead, Rick.
And maybe it looks like I'm at MetLife Stadium today, but the reason you can tell that it's not real is there are actually fans in the background. There won't be fans on Sunday, except for myself and maybe a full foolish season ticket holders, because this situation reeks of a power struggle and a power play by Joe Douglas and possibly Woody Johnson and certainly Aaron Rodgers, of essentially allowing Zach Wilson to walk it back, to go down with his head hanging and tell Robert Saleh he does want to get in. Whether that message came from his camp, whether it came from Zach directly and it got out, who knows? But obviously there was some validity to that report. And now it's damage control. And this is such a dysfunctional situation. I mean, when you go back to obviously the fourth snap of the season, I mean, you, I, and everybody, any Jet fan would know, we're screaming from a mountaintop, beating the drum to bring a quarterback in here, bring a quarterback in here. We've seen this Zach Wilson movie. We know how it ends. And here we are. And this was the sequel sucked. The third one sucked. They made a fourth episode. And now they're making a fifth one. And it's just beyond my comprehension how they can trot Zach Wilson out there. And is he more talented than any quarterback on the roster aside from Aaron Rodgers? Yes. Arm talent, fantastic. Can make plays with his legs. Does he know how to run an offense? No. Does he know how to handle locker room? No. Did he show small signs of leadership this year? He did. But what happened when things got tough and got difficult and he got benched and they were starting to see some negative buzz about him? He regressed. This report comes out about having one eye on his quarterback future that's probably outside of New York and not being there for his current teammates, his current organization. And I'm just, like I said, Robert Saleh, if you can fault him for something, he's too much of a player's coach. Maybe he has to have a little more backbone and be a little more stern with the locker room. Certainly a guy like Zach, maybe he doesn't have to be as expressive to the media and give them so many punching lines and so many headlines. But I mean, aside from that, this organization is leaving Robert Saleh out there to dry. Yeah. I mean, he has literally tried every trick in the book, from rotating quarterbacks to inserting younger receivers and running backs, offensive line combinations, moving Hackett. His next move, he went from the field to the booth. He's going to be in the parking lot for the next. I mean, what else can this guy possibly do to try to jumpstart this offense? I mean, I truly feel bad for Robert Saleh, even though, again, he could show a little more leadership if you want to nitpick.
I mean,
just to go along with what Rick said, I apologize, Michael, but let me go along with what Rick said. And I agree with him absolutely 100%, because at least Saleh is trying to make something work here. He's trying to make something work. And unfortunately, because the offensive line was complete crap, there's no holes forget even Dalvin Cook, because we all know that he's not getting a lot of snaps anyway. But still, though, for him, for Breece Hall, I don't think Abanaconda has even seen
never plays. He never plays.
He never plays. He never plays at all. So, I mean, and the wide receivers, as talented as Garrett Wilson is, he's dropping the ball. Lazard's dropping the ball. I mean, he got benched last week in the game against the Falcons, not the Falcons, the Dolphins, and he just, someone had to answer for their drops. Conklin's dropped, Uzama's dropped, committing penalties, the false start penalties, the holding penalties. I mean, no matter what positives they've done, it always gets brought back because of stupid, dumb penalties that cost them, moving down the field, at least getting to the end zone. They're not able to get into the end zone. They barely have. What was the last time they went to the end zone? Oh, the touchdown by Garrett Wilson that was already too little too late, because they let the Dolphins run roughshod all over the place.
I mean, there are a couple things here. One, I want to piggyback off what you just said, Dan, because I just want to play devil's advocate for one thing. Neither one of us blames Zach Wilson for everything that went wrong this year, because, as you mentioned, there's been drops all over the place. There's been plenty of culprits in the offense. Obviously, the offensive line has been a disaster. Joe Douglas's inability to fix this offensive line and improve this offensive line is a huge black mark at him. Forget the quarterback situation. That alone is a huge black mark on Joe Douglas. And then you also consider the penalties, lack of discipline, lack of focus. But that being said, two things that really bug me from these last couple of days. One, who was the leaker? I mean, now there's been some people online saying, oh, maybe it was Tim Boyle because the way the Jets so quickly released him in the midst of all this chaos. I have no idea whether he was or wasn't. But who was the leaker? And it kind of upset me when Robert Saleh went on the Michael Kay show and Don LaGreca asked him point blank. He says, are you at least curious to try to find out what went on in your clubhouse? Who took, Zach's own concerns or his worries or what he assumed were private conversations, and then let it out. And he says, "Oh, I really don't worry about too much about that." How do you not worry about that? I couldn't believe when he said that, and then he tried to backtrack off of that very quickly. And then the second thing that bugs me, the total dysfunction of it all. It's just bugging. It bugs the hell out of me. It really does, because Zach Wilson has gotten so many chances, so many different chances, and now you're going to go back to him after this report. Saleh try to play down a question by Rich Zamini, where he asked him, "Are you concerned about the locker room having Zach's back now after this story got out?" He's like, "Oh, I don't worry about my locker room." You better make sure. I mean, I assume that he has a pulse of the locker room, but he better make sure, because now the kid looks even worse after this story got out. And I have to assume, while there's smoke, there's fire. We all know these are two very experienced reporters who went out there and did a lot of hardcore research to find out before they ever published anything.
And Michael, if I could say really quickly, this was not a new issue for the Jets. Remember going back to Rodgers' days when there was supposed mole and who were the leaks coming from, and it turned out it was Mike Pettin that was leaking a lot of things about the offense and Rex and disgruntled players, and you had a former reporter, Manish Mehta, always citing anonymous sources. So this is more of like an organizational wide problem, is leak it when things get bad and ugly and people start finger pointing. How it gets out in the media, like you said, it's aggravating. And it's why it's an expression I hate, you hate, and Mike and Dan hates too. But it's same old Jets, because it's the dysfunction, the chaos, and just the total disorder that makes the organization, and really it reflects on the fans, look like total fools. So for me, look, nobody expected what happened to Aaron Rodgers to happen, but it just shows me that he was basically the glue that was holding this entire organization together. And that is a larger problem that Joe Douglas is going to have to address in the offseason, not only bringing in offensive line help, but bringing in higher character guys. I mean, you have CJ Mosley leading on the defensive side of the ball. Who is an offensive leader? Garrett Wilson, he's a young guy. He's staying and trying to do all the right things, but he's not really that veteran. They need that veteran presence on that offensive side of the ball. God forbid Aaron Rodgers gets injured, to keep the ship together, because Zach Wilson isn't it, and the answer isn't on the roster, at least at this point so far.
They needed, and I know this is crying over spilled milk, aside from the veteran quarterback, in addition to Rodgers, a veteran offensive playmaker, like a Adam Thielen or somebody like that, who has been around the league for a long time. Now, I know he's in Carolina, and they're a complete mess themselves with David Tepper, but you need that kind of veteran person on your team. You need someone who can, hold guys accountable in the locker room on both sides of the ball. I think they tried to do that with Dwayne Brown, but of course that did not work at all on the offensive line. It's just a cataclysmic disaster in so many ways. And then for Aaron Rodgers to go on ESPN and claim that he didn't bash the story at all. He didn't say it was all fake news. He just said that they have to tighten up the ship in house. So that just tells you that there is that leaker out there somewhere in there.
All you can say, Michael, is that the dysfunction finally crept in and the dam broke. That's the problem. No matter how many times Robert Saleh goes in front of the media, during practices at Florham Park, after games, either at MetLife or on the road, the truth of the matter is this: it's always going to be coach speak. He's always going to try and, deflect anything negative coming their way. But unfortunately, it's now become comical, and it is now comical, and it's a shame, because we can all agree we like Robert Saleh a lot. I believe that the players do play for him, because that's the number one thing that we can absolutely say for certain, that they play hard for him because they believe in him and he believes in them. So if you don't have a head coach like that the players will not believe in, well, then you've got a big rudderless ship. But now, going all the way back to, I forgot which week it was, but when Robert Saleh was on Michael K's show, and all of a sudden Michael K says to him, talking about Zach Wilson not doing so well, I think it was after the Giant game or after the Charger game, he said, well, why don't you bring in, you brought in Trevor Siemian, why don't you let him start? And then Saleh couldn't answer that question, because he was basically taken aback and not confused, but like startled, like, oh my God, what do I have to say?
Yeah,
I don't think he can. I think his hands are tied. I don't think he ultimately is making that. I think if you gun to his head right now, would you say, do you want to start Zach Wilson or Robert Saleh? He'd say, hell no, cut the kid. But he's beholden to the owner and to Aaron Rodgers and to the GM. Sorry, Dan, I just had to get that in there.
But that's fine, Rick, because that's the same thing I'm saying, but it's not just that. I just feel bad for the guy, but unfortunately, this is the situation that's going to happen. Should both Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh be fired at the end of the year? Yes. Do I think they will be? Honestly, I will say no, because I think Woody Johnson is going to keep them in there, and Aaron Rodgers is going to tell Woody, keep them in there, and they'll have another year.
Rick, I'll let you tackle
that next year.
I'll let you tackle that next, Rick. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just going to, this is the situation you run into when you leave your head coach out there in front of the media firing squad and you throw him to the wolves, and he's tried, like we talked about, every possible avenue to improve the offense. He didn't want to go back to Zach Wilson. Is he going to speak out of turn against his owner and against the GM's wishes and offend not only Zach, forget Zach, but Aaron? And so, you know, he's coach speak, but he's also being very like politically correct to not upset and ruffle the feathers within the organization. And then, you know, he's still getting blame. And who's the first guy that's going to go? Like you said, Dan, it's not going to be Joe Douglas, not going to be Aaron Rodgers, and Woody's not selling the team. So he's going to be the first guy to go. And then the last guy on earth that would deserve to succeed Robert Saleh as head coach is probably Nathaniel Hackett. And he would be the top guy that Aaron Rodgers would say put in. So again, I don't think the Jets are going down that road. If they start going down that road, they're in a world of trouble. I would have never, Michael, you and I talked about this. We said that if things went south for the Jets, that Aaron Rodgers could be a malcontent and things could start unraveling and he starts finger pointing. I didn't think that after being lost for 4 plays, that all of a sudden this ripple effect he's had on the organization, forcing Nathaniel Hackett on us, forcing Alan Lazard a 4-year, $44 million contract, Billy Turner, Randall Cobb, all these offensive players that are not performing. It's really done a disservice to this team, this organization. And like I said, the clock is now ticking on Aaron Rodgers for next year. I mean, the Jets get back to the playoffs, win the division. They're going to have to be AFC title game or better, Super Bowl or better to wash the stink away from the season, because that has been how disastrous it's been in Aaron Rodgers' I will not even say first year. I'll say first 4 plays in a New York Jets uniform.
Well, I'll say this, to be fair, when they were bringing all those guys in, a lot of us were excited. Even I was excited, because it was the idea of like, hey, look, we're going to bring in these guys from the Packers. They've had success with Aaron Rodgers. This could end up being a good thing. Unfortunately, when you lose Rodgers, the whole thing just came apart. Even Nathaniel Hackett, as bad as he was in Denver, you thought, okay, well, he had success with Rodgers and with this offense and the system. Maybe it'll translate here. And of course, it has not worked out at all without Aaron Rodgers in the lineup. And even now, Rodgers going at 40, pushing 41, we don't even know what he's going to look like next year, coming off of injury. But my question is this: where, out of everything that's going on the last week, where the hell is Joe Douglas? You have your head coach who has been thrown to the wolves, trying his best to answer questions about a story, about a leak, about leaks in the building, and he's trying to dance around it the best he can. You have your quarterback who is angry at the organization, and Zach Wilson, and in many ways, rightfully so, I guess, in some ways. At the same time, they've given him a lot of rope to try as much rope as possible, more than Mark Sanchez or Geno Smith ever got, and he has certainly not delivered in his own right in Zach Wilson. So I can't feel too sorry for him. Where is Joe Douglas, who's created this monster, who's created this mess? We have Aaron Rodgers going out there speaking for the organization. Where's the GM? Where is he? I don't know. That's the thing that bugs me most of all.
And I understand what you're saying, Michael, that the general manager during the season can only speak twice a year, halfway point, and then after the regular season is over with, or whenever they are eliminated from the playoffs, if they make the playoffs. They're
eliminated.
Yeah. But like I said, you're right. Joe Douglas should go to the podium at Florham Park and just say, something to not only tell the media, but to tell the fans, look, my bad. Everything that's been going on, it's my fault, this, my fault, that. If he wants to do that, it's up to him. I don't know. I don't care. But the truth is, he has to go up there and at least explain himself and not wait till you get to the end of the regular season period, because you're 4-3, and we're not going to apologize for any wins that the Jets got.
No.
Okay? We're not going to apologize for 3.
Well, not apologizing, just explain what happened.
Exactly.
Just come out there and say, hey, look, I know my guys are taking a lot of bullets here. I'm going to come out and try to set the record straight on everything that's going on here with our quarterback situation, with our head coach. I know he's taking a lot of shots. Just go out there and help out. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that's it.
And all three of us have covered a professional or college team in some form or fashion. And for me, I covered the Giants. My first year is 2013. They're 2 years removed from a Super Bowl. They start the season 0-6. The Giant fans are just beyond. I mean, you think this season is bad. That was like catastrophic for them. So they had, during their bye week, they had the general manager, Jerry Reese, come and explain and be transparent and he didn't have all the answers, but at least he showed face and tried to take some heat off Tom Coughlin, take heat off Eli Manning. And that is so long overdue for Joe Douglas. Why that has not been done to this point, like you said, I agree with you guys. The only saving grace is what you mentioned, Michael, is like, look, people were excited when Aaron got his guys here to New York and he brought in his system and Nathaniel Hackett. Now the question remains, look, Aaron Rodgers won 2 MVPs in this system. Is this system truly as broken as we think it is, or was it literally tailored for Aaron Rodgers? You hope it's the second answer. But again, I only equate it to Adam Gase. Peyton Manning endorsed Adam Gase, thought he's the most innovative guy in the world, just like Rodgers is endorsing Hackett, when in reality, the actual wizard behind the curtain was Peyton Manning in Denver and was Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay and now in New York. So
what you're saying is, Rick, you're going to hate me for this, but you know where I'm going with this, Dan.
Here it comes.
Oh, okay. I know
you want Tom Brady to go out there and say Josh McDaniels sucks. Go hire.
Hey, look, it could be. His record speaks for himself. I don't know.
Oh my God. Sorry, I had to go there.
We can do a whole a Josh McDaniels fiasco podcast if you want.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had to go there. It was just too.
Well, I was going to say this. Well, I was going to say this. What Peyton Manning. This all revolves around Peyton Manning. He's the one that told the Jets to hire Adam Gase, and Adam Gase hired Joe Douglas. So it's all come full circle, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. That's a good point. People forget that Joe Douglas was an Adam Gase guy. People forget that big time.
Exactly.
Oh.
Let me just throw this out at you guys real quick. Just recently on Twitter, Micah Parsons has his own podcast on Bleacher Report, and he talked about Zach Wilson. Guess who he blames for Zach Wilson's problems, losing confidence? He blames the New York media, and he also blames New York Jet fans, and he blames New Yorkers for making Zach Wilson lose his confidence. Excuse me? What did we do? All we did was root for the kid to try and become supposedly the future quarterback, the future, generational talent that we thought he was going to be when Joe Douglas drafted him and he sent away Sam Darnold. And what happened? Nothing.
There are people who are still defending Zach Wilson to this day. I mean, even with this report, people saying, "Oh, it's fake news." Well, it wasn't fake news. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it.
No.
I mean,
Diana Rossini is a legitimate reporter, for God's sake. I mean, come on.
And I can tell you from being in the stadium on Sunday, there were people with Zach Wilson jerseys using the bathroom at halftime. People put in Zach Wilson. Where's Zach Wilson? So, like you said at the top of the show, Michael, I don't remember a quarterback, forget Jets history, that has had more rope than Zach Wilson in the hot seat of a market in New York. I think that's just Micah Parsons trying to protect one of his own, the fraternity of players, and it's us, the players, against the fans and the media, etc. I don't take much stock in that, and I don't think there's any truth to it, because Zach Wilson he's like a cat, like you said, 9 lives. I mean, how much of a body of evidence do you need to see to understand that he's not a starting caliber quarterback? And great, trade him to Tennessee or cut him and let him sign with Tennessee and reinvent his career as a backup. Good for him. He can be somebody else's problem. I'm done with it.
But see, here's the thing, Rick, and the unfortunate thing is that even if you do cut him, the salary cap hit the dead cap hit's going to really be large, $11 million. And even if you do want to trade Zach Wilson to another team, who is going to take him?
Tennessee.
No one.
Trade him to Tennessee.
No one. Unless you offer a pick along with it that maybe you can coax them to take maybe $5 or $6 million off of the dead cap hit, then maybe you might get that happen. But it's not going to. No one is going to take him unless he is a free agent and off of the books of the Jets, so they don't have to take a quarter or half of the money that's owed to him.
I'll be honest, if I could just say one thing. Zach has shown if he was, let's say, signed on with Tennessee and became a backup, he can start for a short period of time. If he had to come in an emergency situation and play, or he had to play 2 games, it's the fact that Aaron Rodgers went down in week 1 and you had to have Zach Wilson play a full slate of schedule. That's when he gets exposed. So I think a team would, as an emergency option, a second/third quarterback, I think there could be value for him. And that's the only reason why you play him right now, is to see if he can at least up his trade value. That's the only reason I see it even play him.
Yeah,
I
that's
can understand that as well. I understand as well, but like I said, I mean, I don't know if anyone's going to trade for him. I think they're going to wait for his contract to be up, or if he gets cut. So, and if he does get cut, it's still a big risk because he's got one more year left.
Well, someone's going. This is why these next 5 games are his audition, and he says, "Well, I'm ready to rip. I'm ready to make it happen." Well, for your own NFL future, because it's not going to be here with the Jets, that's for sure. You got a chance to go out there if you're Zach Wilson and show somebody else in the NFL that you can be a pretty decent player at this level, as we're coming to the end of the show here very soon. So this is his audition, in my mind. For someone else, for the Jets, it has just been a cataclysmic meltdown of, in public relations wise, a complete and utter train wreck. There's no other way to put it. I don't know. I agree with you, Dan. I think ultimately they're going to keep everybody here because they're all tied to Aaron Rodgers. I just don't see that changing at all. And as a result,
someone's at the front doorbell.
That's right. Someone is at the front doorbell. And as a result, they're going.
It's Zach Wilson, run!
It's at your door.
He's coming. He's listening to this podcast. He's like, "You want to?" Oh man! But no, seriously, they're going to bring everybody back, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens for another year. And then you have speaking of dick cat money, it's about Aaron Rodgers' contract going forward after 24, going to 25 with all that money left over. Rick, final thoughts, and then Dan, final thoughts.
Again, look, if the team's 8-4 and Rodgers is healthy, this isn't even a conversation. This is what's systemic in losing cultures. And when you have a locker room full of young guys that are hungry, like Sauce, like Garrett, that want to win, and they have frustration, and there's no leadership other than Aaron Rodgers, who can't even play, this is what you get. And like you said, you got to hope to regroup. Maybe Zach finds something at the end of the season here, and Aaron gets back healthy and is at least 90% of what he was when he was healthy in training camp this year.
All I can say is that this season has been a complete disaster. It's a shame it's a disaster after Monday Night Football. We don't have to keep on saying it because we all know what happened. I'm not going to repeat it, but still, though, I just think it's complete incompetence on the general manager that he did not get a better quarterback to take over the team and start, to hell the high water about the system and about the play calling, or, this is the Aaron Rodgers system. You got to go and fix something. And Joe Douglas did not do that. It's a big indictment on him. And do I think they're both gone after the end of this year? No, I think they're going to be remaining. I think Woody Johnson is, Aaron Rodgers is in Woody Johnson's ear and is telling him, keep him here for another year. And I think that's what's going to happen. But I do feel bad for Saleh. I really do. I just the way he looks disheveled out there. He looks really like his 2 dogs and died, and he just can't recover from it. And that's what it feels like what this season is right now. He just can't recover from it.
I said to you guys in text messages, I wouldn't be shocked if he just steps down at the end of the year. I hope I'm wrong, because I think he's a good coach.
Me too.
Even with all of his flaws, I think he's a good coach. We'll see how this thing plays out for them over the next few weeks. But this season has been one of the biggest train wrecks any one of us have ever seen. It's just going to get worse on Sunday when the Texans come in. Oh my God.
And more rain in the forecast, so that'll be fun.
Rain. That's gonna be
Flop Fest Part 4, right?
Just take a photo of yourself with like one of those umbrella hats. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God, I can't do it.
All right, folks. You know what to do. Like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts below. We'll talk to you next time.